Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group and I am the advertising manager for Handweavers Guild and I get to be your host today. We are so excited to have Heddlecraft back with us today as our sponsor. Heddlecraft is a digital weaving magazine and it's designed for weavers who already know how to weave, but they want to learn more and understand more about weaving. If you have not seen this magazine, it is a gem. Be sure you go online and check it out, heddlecraft.com. As always, if you will wait and put your questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. We love your comments in the chat, but please put your questions in the Q&A and then I can see them and ask them toward the end. We'll do questions at the last 15 minutes of the program. Today, we are honored to have Giovanna Imperia. Giovanna is the author of Kumihimo Wire Jewelry. She has written several articles, many articles on braiding and weaving. Her work is known in many juried and invitational national and international exhibits. Selected work has also been reproduced in textile and jewelry books. And her work can be found in private and museum collections. Giovanna's works focuses on the exploration of the tactile and the organic nature of fiber while pushing the boundaries of the expected definitions of body adornment and 3D. This is accomplished by actively involving the user through the concept of transformation. And we're going to talk more about this today too. The idea of actively engaging the user with shaping and transforming the art piece. The use of wire is an integral part of this concept as it allows the piece to retain the chosen shape. And I can't wait to hear more from Giovanna. Hey, Giovanna.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it will be. We're excited to have you here today.
Well, thanks.
Let's start with the important question. What is your favorite tea?
My favorite tea is actually green tea.
Ah, hot, cold, both?
Hot, 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 hot.
Hot, hot, hot. All right. Well, you've got an interesting history of being in fiber, but how did it all start?
Oh, this is taking me back many, many, many decades. I actually learned to knit when I was about 9, 10 years old, and my auntie taught me how to knit. And what I found fascinating was the ability of touching the material and creating something with my hands. And so I spent a lot of time playing around with yarns, knitting and crocheting. And then I put it aside for a while. I got back when my kids were a little bit older and I had a little bit more time to do stuff. So it goes back many, many years with a big break in between. And then I started again about 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you started out as in a corporate job, a corporate setting.
Oh, yes.
Before you became a full-time artist. Now, there's a lot of security in being in a full-time job, benefits, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So would you share with us how you decided to take that leap? That's a lot of courage on your part.
Well, it's called burnout.
Ah, okay.
Right. Part of the challenge is that I was working for my last corporate job was for a computer company. And the way computer companies operate, and I don't think they have changed much, is that you are working on very tight timelines because product cycles are very short. So you don't really have a life of your own. You're kind of forced to work whenever you have to and be available whenever you have to. And that's very exciting for a while, but after a while you go, well, I'm not really sure I like this anymore. And so that was a pretty good incentive for me to get out. I was also fortunate that I could do that. A lot of people unfortunately cannot. But I was in a situation where I could handle it. And so I said, I'm out of here.
Lucky for us. Lucky for us. You talked some about, in the opening, we talked some about your work is organic and transformation. Now, this piece that we're going to look at right now, these two pieces, I think, are great examples of that. That they involve the wearer. They are part of the transformation. Can you talk more about this and these two pieces?
Okay, so the piece on the left is actually a fairly large brooch. And we can talk about all the different techniques that went into it. But basically, the bottom line is that it is a pulley system. So I can make it as long or as short as I want, and I can choose to pull one side, as in this case, or both sides, and change the shape depending on which cord I pull and how much I pull, right? And so that allows you to wear the brooch in a number of different ways. The piece on the right is a double weave with wire, and I created pockets, and inside those pockets, I put those vials, those plexiglass vials with, I took apart a rose seed necklace that came from India and it smelled like roses. So I decided to put the beads inside the tube. And you can wear it as you see it in the picture, or you can take the tubes out, or some of the tubes out, or you can open the tubes and let the scent come out. Obviously, this is a fairly old piece, so the scent is gone, but the concept is still the same, right?
I love it that you can wear it several times and it's going to look different every time because
Absolutely,
change it.
absolutely. Yes.
And I like the idea. I don't know why. Why do we love containers? But I love the idea that it contains something.
Right,
The
right.
bracelet on the right. That's so neat.
Yes, and that was the idea, because I was playing around with, at that time I was playing around with double weave and triple weave, and I wanted to do it in wire because I can shape it. And actually I came across the book from Carol Connor on double weave, and he did have some examples of pockets, and I thought, yeah, you know what? Let me play around with it. Let me see what pockets would look like. But the pocket in and of itself with wire is not, has flexible is not the right word, but you can't do what you normally do with fabric where you can stuff it, right?
Mm.
So I had to come up with an alternative, and I thought these vials would be an interesting alternative.
Well, I normally don't get to see the check, but Robin Spady just said, "Ooh, jewelry for spies." I
Oh
love
yes,
that.
oh yes, Robin.
All right. Dun, 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 dun. That's good. I like that. But you really
Oh,
could. You could put all kinds of things in there, you know? You
oh,
forget your grocery
sure,
list. You just
sure.
stick it in your bracelet.
Well, in fact, the title of that piece is "I've Got a Secret," right?
Ah, even better.
Yeah,
Even better.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, talking about transformation, as I read more about you and I learned more about you, I was struck by your life is a great example of transformation. I mean, if nothing else, you went from corporate to this, and it's interesting because unless I'm misquoting this, you started out by learning how to do Kumihimo by Roderick Owens. Was it his book?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
250
And
grades, yes.
and then from there, you just became one of the best known artists of Kumihimo. So looking back on that, I mean, there's so much about this I want to ask you about, but looking back on that now, was there a point that you realized that you had kind of crossed the line from being somebody who taught Kumihimo to kind of being the authority or the expert? Were you
Uh,
aware of that or?
well, in probably not at that time, but in retrospect, a key point in my progression, in my creative progression, happened a couple of decades ago.
Uh-huh.
I was at a workshop in San Francisco with Makiko Tada and other Kumihimo artists. And she saw a piece that I did actually for a complex for small small expressions. I think it was in small
Okay.
expressions in Vancouver. And she kind of liked the concept, and she asked me if she could take pictures because she was very interested in what I did. So that to me was probably a good turning point because it told me that I was doing something that was just more than your typical course to hang pendants, right? And was a little bit more a complex thought associated with Kumihimo. So I think that that's probably my turning point, my clearly turning point. Had you asked me that at that time, I would say, no, I don't think so. Right? But yeah, in retrospect, that was it. That was the time.
Now, can you say a little bit about who you're talking about and that people who may not be aware of who that is? I want to make sure people keep
Makiko
this in
Tada?
context.
Yeah, Makiko Tada is probably one of the best known Kumihimo experts. She's from Japan, obviously, and she has written a series of books on Kumihimo for different pieces of equipment. She's also an historian and has done a lot of reconstructions for various museums, particularly the museum in Tokyo. And as part of her engineering dissertation, she developed a braiding machine that was designed to make industrial braids that could be used as insulators, for instance, or to be set around airplane windows and things of that sort. And what made the project very interesting to me is the fact that she had to think about how you move the bobbins in order to be able to create the path that creates the structure, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And what makes it challenging is that Kumihimo, it's really a three-dimensional structure as opposed to weaving, which traditionally it's just 2 dimensions, right? So she really had to flip the way you look at braids and think about the path that the bobbins follow in order to create the structure. And so that to me was kind of an interesting concept. Has nothing to do with making jewelry, but has a lot to do with thinking about structures in a different and innovative way.
Yeah, I have to admit that my husband is involved in manufacturing car parts and building cars. And one day I picked up a piece and I'm like, this is Kumihimo. This is, with that you can put a core in. I was like, this is Kumihimo. And he goes, it's what? I said, yeah, this is Kumihimo. And they put wiring in it to protect it. And so when you said that, I thought about that. I thought that's where that came from.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. But if you look at some of the ropes that are used for climbing mountains,
Uh-huh.
that's a Kumihimo structure,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I bet. I bet.
Yeah. And it's a very specific structure that it's actually designed to be particularly strong. So it won't fray as other structures could potentially. So there are all sorts of very interesting applications, honestly.
I love it that to me, that's one thing I love about fiber. It can be so artistic and it can be so practical.
Oh yes.
And it doesn't have to be exclusive. It can be both. And
Yep.
that's such a great example of that.
Yeah.
So thinking of talking of beautiful, this next piece is a gorgeous example of, I'm assuming this is wire.
Yes. Yes.
And so where did you get started with wire? How did that, is that in Roderick's book or did that come later?
No. Oh,
Okay.
no. No, what it is that I was interested in creating more shapeable forms. And there is only so much you can do with fiber. At least at that time, I discovered all sorts of other stuff later on. But at that time, I felt that there was only so much that I could do with fiber, either braiding or weaving. And so I decided to start taking a look at what could be accomplished with wire. And I'm not the first one that works with wire. I mean, there is a long list of artists that have used wire to create sculptures as well as jewelry. You know, Arlene Fish, for instance, is probably the best known one. She wrote a book back in 75, I think. And her work is she's 90 and she's still producing work, and you can still find it in all sorts of different exhibits on the West Coast and on the East Coast. So I started looking into that because of what had been done by other artists, and I decided to start playing with it, literally playing, and then I was able to develop some interesting pieces that had some unusual properties for me, from my point of view. So one of the things that I liked about this piece is that it's because wire tends to stay put, it doesn't really move as much as fiber does. You can create very ethereal forms by simply playing with the set and by playing with the beat, right? But you still have a lot of stability because wire is very strong. And so that's what that piece is all about. And
when you say, I'm sorry, when you say beat, you talking about the beat of weaving with it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure.
No, the beat of, yes, exactly. Okay. And so that piece, if I remember correctly, it's some form of lace. I think it's probably Swedish lace, but you can see it's very open. And the reason why it was photographed that way is because I wanted to show with the shadow how ethereal the fabric actually is.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Just weaving with wire, I think it fascinates people. I think it also frightens people. I think it fascinates a lot of people.
Oh no, it's not any different than working with other unusual materials. It's okay.
Oh, it's
just
beautiful.
Be patient with yourself.
It just feels like it got caught in motion, you know, as a moment in time, the wind blowing it, and boom, it's there and it stays. Yeah. I love that. It's just beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, your book, Kumihimo Wire Jewelry, is arguably the book for learning how to use wire in Kumihimo. And I always ask everybody the same thing, because writing a book is a lot of work. Why did you decide to write a book?
I didn't.
That answers that.
I was living by happy life of exploration, and I was approached by the publisher, and I was asked to put together a proposal, and it took some convincing, because I knew that it's a painful process, but they convinced me to go ahead and do it, and I wrote it. It took me more than a year to finish it, and it is a painful process. It's like giving birth. It's just
It's an amazing book. I mean, if you haven't seen this book, the detail in it, the illustrations, it's a lot of work. It's a beautiful, beautiful work.
Well, kudos to my daughter. She did all the graphics there.
Oh, did she?
Yeah,
yes, kudos to her. Because so many how-to books, the graphics are good, but these are excellent. And I think showing the, you know, what goes where, those kind of a layout is very difficult. And she did it beautifully.
Well, you know, that's RISD education paid off, right?
Oh, really? She went to RISD. Okay. All right. There you go. You have said that Kumihimo is made up of a finite number of moves that are just used differently, which is an interesting explanation, kind of in a little concept there, a little tube, right? When you realized that, how did it change your approach to making art, or did it change your approach to teaching?
It changed the approach to teaching, because a tendency that a lot of people have, a lot of students have, is that they want to have the recipe, so to speak. So they want to know what is step one, what is step two, and so on and so forth. And they have difficulty separating themselves from the written instructions, right? And that limits your ability of being a creative artisan. In order to be creative, you really need to understand the structure and then go from there, right? So if you understand that you're limited, and that's for the marudai, for the round stand on it. But if you understand that you can either go this way or that way, you're very limited in terms of the movements. That kind of opens up the possibilities of actually experimenting and creating your own braids. Probably what you're creating it's already been documented, but that's not the point. The point is that you understand the structure and you're separating yourself from the written instructions, and you create by replicating or by changing the structure. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense that, and I hadn't thought of it because I actually did a couple of projects from your book and it just felt so overwhelming, but I think it would have helped if I would have thought about how it's not that big. It's this except expanded, that's just
Right,
this number
exactly.
of things you just expanded. So I think that's a great way of defining this.
Yeah. Well, I thought so, and really, what it does also eliminates a lot of the concerns that a lot of people have, because typically you start with 8 strands
Mm-hmm.
and you move up. But if you understand that I can create the same structure with 8 or 12 or 16 strands or 32 strands for all that matter, but it's the same set of moves, then you're less concerned about the number of bobbins that you have on the marudai, and you become more interested in what happens. What if I put these colors here and there? So, for instance, Rosalie Nielsen has done a lot of work on color placement, and it's based on this concept. It's just, I understand how this type of structure exists. Now let me play with the number of bobbins and the color placements, and let's see what happens, right? So to me, that's very liberating, I would say.
Well, your work is, my originally was going to ask the question about 3D versus 2D, but your work is always 2D. I mean, 3D.
Yeah.
Even flat things are 2D. So I had to kind of rethink that question. And so you do have work that's very sculptural. And so do you find that you favor like something flat versus something more sculptural, or is it what the end product needs to be? How do you decide which way to go with that?
Because I like the ability, and although this cannot be manipulated, but I like the ability of manipulating the piece. I tend to favor 3D forms because I can shape them. They come out of the loom or the braiding stand flat, and I can shape it and manipulate it, and create a 3D form. So I tend to favor 3D. I tend to think in 3D, as a matter of fact. And I just, when I was thinking about flat 2D forms, I don't have anything. except the samples that I used to use. I used to weave for when I was doing shows and selling yarns. I had to have samples. Those were flat, right? But typically, I work in 3D. I think in 3D.
I can't get over how many fiber artists have a science background. They're in,
Yeah,
science/math for you, right?
yeah.
What do you think the connection is for you?
Well, it's you develop an analytical skill, basically. You have to be able to analyze and interpret the data. I did in my corporate world. I did a lot of consumer behavior market research, and so it wasn't sufficient to just say X number of people said such and such. you had to understand why and what was going on in their brains. So you would bring in both quantitative and qualitative data and think about it and come up with an understanding, a profound understanding of what they were telling us. And so to me, that is simply an analytical skill, which I took with me here, because I do need to understand not only the form that I want to create, but also the materials that I want to use, right? Because depending on what I want to do, I may have to go in one direction versus another with the materials. So I got to understand that stuff.
I don't know, this might be an oversimplification. When I think of computers, I always seem to boil it down to ones and zeros. And in a way, Kumihimo is kind of like here, there, here, there. So you can almost see the parallel of either this or that to
Right.
get where you're going.
There is a lot of math, like in weaving. There's a lot of math involved in Kumihimo.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Both of them. And in fact, there are a lot of academic articles and books that have been published on the math and braiding. Yeah. They're beyond my understanding, but there are. So yeah, there's a lot of math, and think about it. Weaving is the same thing. You do have a lot of math.
Yeah,
You do.
absolutely.
You have.
I tell people all the time, my son won't like this, but my son had learning disabilities. And so the teacher said to me, she goes, he's got to learn patterning. He's never going to learn how to read until he understands patterning, which I didn't know patterning was something you had to learn. I thought we just knew this. So, and one of the things I did with him was I gave him one of those little Kumihimo kits, and he got it, and it really kind of helped him understand patterning. So it's kind of basic for a
Yeah,
lot.
but it's a concept that you don't think about, right?
Yeah.
You have to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's
Kumihimo
talk.
it's a great tool for kids.
Oh, it is. It is. They love it. They love it. Immediate gratification. You see something right there when you get done. You've made something.
Yeah. And also,
Um,
kids are always more willing to experiment. So what it
yes. Yes.
right?
Well, let's talk about color in you. The one thing I was thinking about when I was looking at all your work is that we all have these theories about color, but when you use color in wire, I don't know if a lot of those rules apply anymore. So what was it like for you to kind of wrap your brain around using color in wire rather than color in fiber? Because it doesn't react the same, it doesn't reflect back the colors the same way.
Now, what it's interesting, and I did a series of pieces that I don't think I sent the pictures, but what it's interesting about wire is that it tends to reflect a lot of what's around it, right? So when you're playing with color and wire, depending on what wires you put together, you can change the appearance of the piece depending on how the light reflects on the piece, right? So it's actually kind of interesting. So these pieces that I did, there were a series of bracelets where I was using a dominant color like red or blue or green with something slightly more subtle like silver or gold. And what was happening, depending on the weaving structure that I was using, the the pieces would look more red or more gold or more blue and more gold, depending on how you move them and how the light reflected on it. You get some of that in with fibers, but I just personally I felt that the effect was more dramatic in wire simply because of the material itself, right? There's a lot of shyness a lot of brilliance to the wire that you don't necessarily have in fiber, and the colors tend to be more blocky, so you don't have a range of reds or a range of blues. You have one red, one blue. You're kind of limited, but because you're limited, then you can play with those colors in a very interesting way. So the sad thing though is that unfortunately a lot of collars have been eliminated from the marketplace since I started. And it's primarily the MAC collars, very fine gauges like 32, 34s. They just, the manufacturers just take them off the market because the demand is not that great. So the amount of flexibility that I had when I started playing with wire, it's kind of disappeared. You don't have that range available to you, so you kind of you gotta think about that when you work with wire now, I think.
Wow. Wow, I didn't realize that.
So the
Well,
piece on my cover of the book, a lot of people would like to be able to do it. Well, they can't because one of the colors is long gone. So you see it's a combination of shiny yellow and matte yellow. Well, the matte yellow doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't. So you can't replicate the piece. I can give you alternatives, which is what I did at the last time I taught this class. I can give you some alternatives. But if your desire is to do exactly that because you like how the light reflects on the piece, you're out of luck. There's nothing I can do about it.
that kind of leads me back to the question I was thinking of is that did you or do you sample a lot, or do you just find these combinations that work for you and start understanding this just by working and doing the next piece and doing the next piece?
Yeah, I do not do a lot of samples, unfortunately. I tell my students always sample, 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 but I don't.
We won't tell anybody.
But I play with the piece, so I think about what colors go together, and what kind of effects are I'm likely to use. So if you go back to the piece that you had earlier with the agate, that neck piece, there is what I did there. Can you find it? I think was the last piece that he showed.
Yeah, Mandy, can you go back to one? There you go.
So in this piece, I was using pre-cut Kumihimo silk already variegated, so I didn't dye this piece. But I knew that because of how it was originally dyed in Japan, it was going to be kind of a muddle effect. So what I wanted to do, I wanted to combine a collar of wire that was subtle, but yet you could see a sparkle here and there. And you can actually see it in some spots. It's more visible in some spots, but than others. So there was actually some thought that went into what wire and what color wire, how much wire I was going to use in this piece. So while I do not necessarily sample, I do think about stuff like that.
Well, I think a lifetime of what you've done is probably a lot of sampling right there, right?
Well, I do have a big bin of, oh, oops, not quite right.
I like that. Oops, not quite right. Um, now you had a business that you just stopped. You just retired from your business, correct? Of
Yes.
selling yarn, right? You were a yarn provider.
Yes.
Now, again, a lot of hard work. And I've heard people say that being in the fiber business helped them with their own creativity. And I heard other people say it hindered them. What was that like for you?
Well, I started the business because I was doing a lot of exploration with unusual materials, right?
Mhm.
And so I ended up building some relationships with the mills in Italy, principally, that produce these materials. And so I decided, well, I can sell them. Why not? And that's how I started the business. Not a lot of thought, right? The business part kind of consumed me. And so my productivity from a creative point of view really went down because I was more focused on developing samples that I needed to show people what to do with the stuff. So it was kind of, on one hand, it allowed me to to explore these materials in a number of different ways. But on the other hand, it kind of hindered my ability of doing what I felt like doing for myself, right? So it was kind of a mental challenge or an emotional challenge. But I did enjoy teaching people how to use the stuff. I enjoyed, discovering new materials and convincing industrial producers that I just needed a few pounds. I didn't need a ton of something. So it was so there were some very interesting aspects to the business that I really, really enjoyed. But there was also this internal conflict that I had to deal with.
So where do people go to get?
The reason why I quit is because of COVID. The restrictions in Europe, in Italy in particular, were very, very hard on the mills. They couldn't go to work. They couldn't produce. They couldn't do anything for months and months and months and months, which meant that I didn't have an inventory. I did not have staff. And some mills survived, some mills did not. And so it was a mess. And I decided, I'm too old for that. I'm sorry, I'm too old.
That's a battle. That's a big battle.
It's hard. It's hard. And I felt for them. I felt because it wasn't their choice, but that's life. That's life.
So where do people go now to get those gorgeous yarns used off?
Lunatic Fringe. I think Michelle may be on this call. Lunatic Fringe bought a lot of my yarns, and they have continued the relationship with several of the manufacturers that survived.
Yay, the loonies! Thank you.
Yep. And what's nice is that you can really do some very interesting stuff, combining their more traditional yarns like the cottons, the color spectrum, for instance, and my unusual materials like rubber, for instance, or stainless steel silk or things of that sort. So you can mix and match this stuff, and you can create some very interesting, innovative concepts.
So what's next for you?
Oh, I don't know.
You're a busy woman.
I am.
Now you're going to be teaching this summer, right?
Probably, yes. I'm teaching. So the American Kumihimo Society is going to have a gathering, or a conference, if you will, in Minneapolis in September, early September. And I proposed a class for them, which I've never taught before, but I think it's going to be very interesting. But then after that I'm going to be very busy with the International Braids Conference that it's going to happen in 2025 in June, and it's going to be in Cleveland. I'm not going to teach there because I'm going to be running around holding hands and making sure that everybody's happy. So I decided, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to teach if I have to take care of the conference and make sure that everything is okay. So that's a joint effort, by the way, with the Braid Society, which is based in the UK, but it's an international organization. So it's a combined effort between the Braid Society and the American Kumihimo Society. And Cleveland, I think it's a great location. I think actually Minneapolis too, but there is such a huge textile community in the area that I think there should be a lot of interest in what we have to offer. So beyond that, I'm doing some Zoom presentations for guilds, and that's about it.
Well, somebody's commenting that you're going to be teaching this summer in Wichita. Are you teaching at Complex Weavers?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I forgot. Yes. Yes.
She's saving the best for the last, Complex Weavers. That's why she's saying this.
Yeah. I'm teaching a Complex Weaver. Yeah.
Well, good. I hope I see you there.
Yeah, you're going to be there?
Oh, yes. we
Of
have.
course, yes, 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 yes. And I'm gonna try to poke in my head into convergence as well. I
Oh,
haven't
good.
I
We would
haven't
love to
made
see.
a lot of plans, but the fact that I'm not teaching a convergence means again that I'm gonna be fairly flexible in terms of classes that I can take. So
Well, may I say from probably everybody watching, we would love to see your work in
mhm.
some of the exhibits. Your work is just so gorgeous.
Well,
So
you need new stuff.
mhm.
You need new
Time to
stuff.
play. Now it's time for you to make what you want to make. And we
I
want to
know,
see it in an exhibit.
I know, I know.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
excited about this conference in 2025 with the Braiding Society. That sounds exciting that the two are coming together to do that one conference. I hope
Right.
you'll keep us informed about that. We would like to make sure
Absolutely.
our viewers and everybody knows about that conference.
Yeah,
It's
because what's interesting is that the scope is much broader than what the American Kumihimo Society does on its own. And so
uh-huh.
we're going to have tablet weaving. So John Malarkey is going to be there, for
Oh,
instance.
wow.
Yeah, we're going to do spraying with Carol James.
Oh, that'll be fun.
We have several instructors are going to do ply split. Barbara Walker is going to do a new class on combining Takadai braids with ply split, which is I saw the samples and I think it's going to be very exciting. So we have a lot of inkle loom classes, a lot of backstrap classes. So there's a lot of variety, that it's more than just Kumihimo, because it's really the interest for the international audience is really more in narrow weaves. So Kumihimo, it's just a subset of that.
Well, that's exciting. That's
Yes,
exciting.
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Well, we've got all kinds of questions. So let's start taking some questions. And let
Okay.
me warn you all ahead of time. I probably won't get to them all, but I'll get to as many as I can. Um, the several people have asked, what is the size of the large Swedish lace piece? I'm assuming that's the one that was hanging downward
It's
with the
not
lovely
large.
shadow behind it.
It's about yay wide, so it's about 8 inches, 10 inches.
Really?
Yeah, 10 inches by 15. Yeah, it's not a big piece.
Photographs can be so deceiving.
I know, I know. It's a small
Oh,
piece.
all right. Oh, somebody wanted to know if Ruth McGregor wants to know, did you work with wire on the Takata?
Takadai?
Yeah, Takatai. Sorry.
Yes, yes, yes.
I
Yeah.
think people always worry about wire destroying looms and
Mhm.
Takatai, right?
Mhm.
But it doesn't, does it?
No, because I use typically I use coated copper wire. So the coating, it's very soft, and so they don't leave residue on the wood, and they don't cut into the wood. But if you're concerned, you can just use some blue tape, and that protects your stand and your loom.
Good.
I have had people that I was teaching to weave with wire that chose to put blue tape on the apron beam simply because they were concerned. But normally, I never had any problems.
Oh,
All my
good.
equipment has never been protected. I have never had an issue.
Karen LeBlanc wants to know, can you talk about the largest piece you made or installed and the smallest piece that you made?
Woven?
She just said made.
Okay. So I did I did several pieces that did not involve wire, but involved other unusual materials like monofilament, for instance. So there were more yardage kind of pieces. So you're looking at a few yards. Um, I typically like to work with, I don't do very wide pieces. They're typically somewhere between 15 and 20 inches, 25 tops, but they're long, right? They're long pieces. As far as wire, I did a woven piece that was about 25 inches by 4 yards, 5 yards, something like that. And that was a challenge to put on a loom, right, by myself.
I bet.
It was difficult, but it came out okay. And the idea was that piece in particular is a shippable piece. So I give you the yardage and then you do whatever you want with it. So you smoosh it, you change it, you do whatever you want. But that's typically you're looking at, again, the largest pieces are about 20, 25 inches by a few yards.
Holly Elkin wants to know, what is your source for wire? Well, now it's lunatic fringe.
No, they don't sell wire.
Oh,
Pure wire, there are two sources. One is Beat Along that purchased artistic wire, and the other one is Parawire. And actually, I do like Parawire a lot. They have what they call the craft wire, which is the coated copper wire, but they also have other kinds of wire that you can use. But so those are, and they come in different sizes. Those are my main sources.
could you spell that second one? Is it PY?
Para wire, P-A-R-A wire.
P-A-R-A. Okay. We'll put that in the chat. Earlier, someone asked about some other information that we put in there. Makito Katada. I put her name in there. Somebody asked how it was spelled. So we keep trying to put information in the chat there for you. Yeah. Do you mix yarn and fiber and wire together in one piece? You do that often, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I do all the time.
Was it difficult first starting out how to make them match and behave together, or?
No, because I tension them separately.
Oh, okay.
I never tension if I'm working on the loom, right? I never tension them in the same bout. They're always separated.
You do like a double beam? No,
not necessarily. No,
really?
not necessarily. Depending on what I'm doing, I can hang it separately by just using clamps, right? So that works. I did have, of all the looms that I had, only one had two beams, and I rarely used the second beam. I always figured a way to tension separately. And if I was doing stripes as an example, they were always hung separately on clamps.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
well, that's encouraging to the rest of us. We could do that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, they want to know what gauge wire do you typically use?
30, 32, and 34.
Okay.
So the bigger is the number, the finer is the gauge. So I work, because of the work that I do, 30 is probably the largest that I use. Yeah.
I love this from Barbara Walker. What do you do about loom tack-a-dye waste?
Oh, not a lot. I mean, are you talking about waste with wire or waste in general? I don't do much because I don't with fiber, I don't have a lot of waste. With wire, I used to save it and make little balls, and then I would put some resin on top and create little pendants and stuff like that. And then I ended up with way too many little balls, and I decided, you know what, life, I'm not gonna do this anymore. Yeah, but
do you have more loom waste than you do tack-a-dye waste?
Well, it depends on the loom. Like you know, it depends on the loom that you use, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So one of the tricks, because I was working with fairly expensive materials on a regular loom, I started using very thin boat shuttles, and Jim Hockett used to make those, right, for me. Because they were thinner profile, I could weave a whole lot further into the end of the warp than I would have been able to do otherwise. So I did that kind of stuff to reduce my amount of waste. Yeah.
Somebody wants to know, what kind of tape did you use on the tack-a-dye, please?
Blue tape.
Blue tape,
Painter,
like painter's tape?
yeah, painter's
Oh,
tape.
okay, okay. Just want to be sure. All right, I'm going to ask this, and you can throw something at me if you want to, but I've heard some people say that they really don't like those little plastic cushiony beginner Kumihimo disc.
Mhm, mhm.
What's your feeling on that versus a nice Mari die, you know? You can
Hey,
say whatever you want. It's okay.
no, I just they're very portable, so I do use them.
There you
Uh,
go.
the because I can't go on the plane with with a Marudai, right? But I can take a little disc and work, and they're very good to teach beginners, some beginners. The main problem that I have is that people want to follow all the numbers. They can't really separate their brains from the numbers. So yes, so I don't like them for that. Sometimes what I do when I see that somebody's struggling, I actually make them turn the disc upside down. So you're working on the side that has no number, no nothing. And that forces you to think a little bit harder about the structure. But you know, they're good, they're portable, they're convenient.
It goes back to what you were talking about earlier, that if you want to really understand what you're doing and not just follow
Yeah,
the pattern
yeah,
or this recipe.
the recipe, yes.
Yeah. Which
And
is
I'm not,
I'm back on the other side. I'm not very good at
well,
it.
and that's absolutely fine. I mean, what is your goal? I mean,
Right,
I
right.
think people are perfectly happy to follow recipes. It's the same thing with weaving, right? There are people that absolutely enjoy the projects in hand woven, and some people that would rather just understand the general concept and go off and do their own thing.
You're so good, Giovanna. You're so good.
It's just it's something for everybody, right?
There is, there is. Um, if someone is getting started, kind of talking about beginners, what is the, and I guess I'm almost saying this from my point of view, what do I need to look for when I get ready to buy a Mori die?
Um, so if you want to start braiding, okay, so
Okay,
there
I've done my little
this,
plastic
yeah.
thing, styrofoam, whatever it's called.
So there are certain characteristics that I think are absolutely critical. The top, what we call the mirror, the top of the Marudai, should have what we call a well. So it's flat and then it goes down into the center hole, right? And you do need that well because it helps with tension. So what you see oftentimes is that a lot of the less expensive Marudai are totally flat. They don't have
Right.
that slope. And while they're you know they work, they're okay. It does make your braiding a little bit more challenging because you don't have the benefit of that tension in the bundles of yarn. So that's one of the things that I look for. The other thing is the size itself. I want to be able to have something that is flexible enough that will let me go from 8 bobbins to 32 bobbins or more,
Mm.
right? So again, you will find some that are about this big and then some that are about this big. So you want to go with a larger size. Those are the two things that I consider.
What are you teaching this summer at Complex Weavers?
I can't remember. I'm honestly cannot remember.
I'm so sorry I asked. I am so sorry I asked. I didn't
I'm
know if
gonna
you were
look it
teaching,
up. I'm gonna look it up. I don't remember.
but it'll be magnificent no matter what it is. It will be
We'll
magnificent.
see. We'll see. Well, I'm
You're a
doing.
busy, busy woman.
I know I'm doing some interesting presentations coming up on weaving with metallics and weaving with crepe and elastic yarns. So I spent a lot of time with my little my microscope taking pictures of the yarns to show the different structures.
Really?
Yeah. It's very interesting. Well,
It
because
is.
that affects how the material will behave, right?
Right.
So I'm trying to think if something like that is something that I offered to complex. I just can't remember. I just cannot remember. I apologize. I should have checked.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today. We do appreciate you being here. I love your work. It's beautiful. In the comments, everyone has been saying how much they love your work. And we
Thank
appreciate
you.
you coming on today and sharing with us your creativity and your experiences and especially your work. Thank you so much. We
Well,
appreciate
thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Well, I did. I had a great time. I
Good.
look forward to seeing you this summer in Wichita.
All
Um,
right. Sounds great.
I'm gonna
All right.
find you. I'm sure you'll be over there with Lunatic Fringe in their booth.
Oh, you bet.
All right. Again,
All
I
right.
want to thank Heddlecraft for being our sponsor today. Thank you, Heddlecraft. And you know, its timing is excellent because the next issue of Heddlecraft is coming out today, from my understanding. And it sounds like it's going to be incredible, as always. A Taste for Crepe Weaves is the title of it, but there's some all kinds of interesting weaving with wire is one of the topics that's coming out. Rockin' a Granite Weaves. I cannot wait to see what that one is. And the cover says over 250 samples. Y'all need to check this out. This is such a great value. This magazine has so much information in it. So be sure you go to heddlecraft.com and check it out and see you can get the past issues. You can sign up and get the future issues also. So thank you at Heddlecraft. We appreciate you sponsoring Textiles and Tea today. If you would like to sponsor an episode, whether it's for you or your guild or your business, all you have to do is go online and go to Textiles and Tea on the HGA website, and you can see where you can purchase a sponsorship for whatever date you would like. We appreciate all of your support in doing that. We have all kinds of interesting things coming up. The Guild Development Retreat will be Saturday, January the 27th. Now, this is a virtual one-day event. And the idea is that it's a chance to motivate and inspire, and again, kind of bring the guilds together to share information. And we're going to do this through panels and discussions. And I think it helps strengthen the leadership. It helps unite the guilds and share with each other. And just a great way to share ideas. It's a great platform to tell each other what you're doing and what works and what doesn't. And it's going to be a wonderful day. Now, the topics are hosting a guild sale, and a lot of people ask about that, diversity and inclusion, developing your board, and the last one, of course, is keeping up and staying relevant in the technological world. It's going to be a great way to gather some information. Now, just a reminder, if you're an affiliate guild, you get 4 spots free. So your guild can decide which 4 people, whether it's your board or whoever, will be going. If you're not involved in a guild and you want to learn more, you can also, if you're a member of HGA, you can attend for $20. What a deal. An all-day workshop for $20. And it's $50 for non-members to attend this retreat and hear the panels. If you want information, you can go to weavespindye.org. There's information there on how to register. You can call us at 678-730-0010. I want to thank everybody for the support we've gotten over the last few months. It has been wonderful. When you donate to HGA, it supports the different programs we have, whether it's the Guild Retreat or Textiles and Tea, a variety of things. And it's a way that we can start looking at what is the next thing that we need to offer to our membership. So thank you all for donating. If you would like to donate or join, you can do that at weavespindye.org. Next week, we have Janie Simpson. We're excited to see Janie. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful week. We'll see you next Tuesday. Happy tea.